throughout the country. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said thus, There came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went, I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them the way to Jordan unto the fords. And as soon as they which pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. And before they were laid down, she came up unto them upon the roof, and she said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, and that ye will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. And the men answered, Our life for yours. If ye utter not this our business, and it shall be when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. And she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. And we'll stop there and let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for the time that we can have in your word tonight, Lord, in your house, Lord. I pray that you'll bless this message, Lord. I pray that you will speak through me tonight, Lord. Use me, and I pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. So like I said, I'm going to be off of our series this evening, looking at the children of Israel, and where we find them in Joshua chapter 2. They've still not yet crossed over Jordan into the promised land. But Joshua sends spies to check out kind of where they will start. When you look at maps of where the scholars claim they crossed over, it's pretty close to where Jericho is. So Joshua knows when we enter the promised land, when we cross over Jordan, Jericho is going to be an immediate thing. This is, we're not going to be able to cross over Jordan and get comfortable. This is going to have to happen pretty quick. So he sends spies to go in and check it out. And you have to remember, it's been 40 years since Joshua has been there. He was one of the spies that Moses sent in, sure, but that was 40 years ago. A lot happens in 40 years. Spending some time thinking about it, that's more than my lifetime. 40 years, a lot happens in 40 years. You forget a lot in 40 years. Again, Joshua, yeah, he was one of the spies, and I'm sure that being that he knows this is the promised land and where God wants them, I'm sure that he thinks about and remembers the promised land. I can't help but think that Joshua, who is one of the 2 who came out of the land originally, saying we can do this, let's go, seeing how great it was and all of that. I can't help but think that every time there was a hardship in the desert, that a man like Joshua thinks, boy, I wish we were in the promised land right now. He saw how great it was, but you forget things over time. Again, I'm thinking about this. My wife and I will sometimes talk about things that have happened in the time we've been married. We've been married almost 16 years now next month. So, if we're talking about things that have happened in our marriage, it's within a 16-year span. But we'll talk about it, and I'll say how I remember it. And then she'll correct me and claim it was another way. or vice versa. She'll say, something she remembers, and no, that's not how it went, Lisa, and, it was something totally, and the way she remembers it and the way I remember it sound nothing alike. Enough so that there are times like we were at the same place, right? I mean, we were experiencing the same thing, weren't we? I'm sure of that. And by the time we finish the conversation, neither of us have any idea what it originally was, because as time goes on, details on things often can get blurred. There's time in there. Joshua went into Jericho, but it was 40 years ago. I have to think, no matter how often he thinks about how great it would be to be in the Promised Land, the details are probably a little fuzzy. But not only would you forget some things, you'd also remember them a little differently. I have to think that as they wandered through the desert, and give me a little liberty here, but I have to think that as they wandered through the desert and their dads, the 12 that went into the land, told of the giants that they had seen, in my mind it had to have been a little bit like a fish story, that every time they tell it, the giants get a little bit bigger and they get a little bit smaller. We started out that they were giants and we were grasshoppers in their sight, and then they were giants and we were ants in their sight, and then, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but to me that makes sense. Every time the story maybe gets a little bit bigger or a little bit worse, it's because you look back on things and your mind often can add new details, which makes for great stories, just not very accurate ones. But you don't want to walk into the Promised Land knowing a battle at Jericho is imminent with an inaccurate story. He doesn't want to go into this, planning to fight Jericho, hoping he remembers it all correctly. But not only do you forget things and memory changes, but things change in 40 years. So I am 34 years old. In the past 34 years, I have changed a little bit. I went from a tiny little 10-pound baby boy. I said that and looked at my mom just because I wanted to see the look on her face. A tiny little 10-pound baby boy to an adult that it really doesn't matter what I weigh. I went from being, this big, 20-something inches, I think is what is on that thing on my mom's hallway, to 6 foot tall. I went from not being able to, talk at all and just cry and scream and whatever, to now I get up here and talk in front of people. Some things have changed in the last 34 years. I've lived here since December of 99, so right at 22 years. This area in the last 22 years has changed a lot. Even in the time I've been here, places that I remember being nothing but trees and farms are now houses as far as the eye can see. I was thinking as I was studying this, one on 208 that a year ago was nothing but farms is now warehouses. A lot changes over time. It's been 40 years since Joshua saw Jericho. Things will have changed a little bit over that time, and he's going to want to see that. You don't want to go into this blind. You want to be prepared for what's ahead and what you're going into. If you're planning on leading this many people into what's going to be hostile territory, you're going to want to be prepared for what may lie ahead. On top of the fact that when Joshua went in 40 years previously, he went to spy out the entire land. This specific trip, when Joshua sends these spies in, is to get details on Jericho. This wasn't go in and look at the giant grapes. This wasn't go see how good the land is, go find the river that's flowing with milk and honey. No, this was looking at it for battle. This is preparation. This is getting some details. So Joshua sends these spies across the river to go check out Jericho, and we really could spend the night on that, but the message, the direction isn't the direction I want to try and focus this evening. I use all that to prepare us kind of for where we're going to go with this. Joshua sends the spies into Jericho, and they don't they don't come back telling Joshua about the city. I'm sure they gathered information about the city. I'm sure the information was given to him also. But what these spies came back seeing was what God had already done. So we stop before this. Let's look at chapter 2, verse 23 and 24 real quick. And the two men returned and descended from the mountain and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all things that befell them. Catch this. And they said unto Joshua, truly, the Lord hath delivered into our hands the land. For even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us. Children of Israel have been wandering the desert for the last 40 years. As we know, quite literally wandering until a generation dies. That is their mission for 40 years, is walk around in circles until a generation dies. There is nothing about that strikes fear in the hearts of your enemy. There's nothing about that makes your enemies shake in their boots that, yeah, they've been walking for 40 years waiting for people to die. Nothing about that says, we have a strong army ready to take over the promised land or that you're ready to defeat them. Passage tells us that they had already heard some of the things that Israel had done along the way, but even looking at that, none of that is enough that it should have intimidated these people. And yet they go into Jericho, and what they came out seeing was not the walls and the strength of the army and any of those sorts of things. What they came out seeing is God already prepared a way for us. They came out recognizing we haven't even crossed over the Jordan River into the land yet, and the inhabitants are already afraid. So with that kind of as the focus, I have three things this evening I want us to see that God had already prepared. Before they ever crossed into the promised land, three things that God had already prepared. Number one, God had already prepared a refuge. We just saw it in verses 1 through 4. I'm not going to have us read that again. Why would Rahab hide these men? You really spend some time thinking about it. I think it's easy for us to kind of skim past things like this. Rahab has no reason to hide these spies. To her, these are enemies of her people, her country, her town. These are their enemies. They are coming to spy out Jericho to destroy it. She lives in Jericho. That's a conflict of interest. I mean, come on. They're coming. These spies are coming with the intent of killing her family and friends and all the people that she knows to take their city. She has no reason to protect these men. The easy thing to do, and I think the thing that would have made the most sense to us for her to do would have been to tell the guards exactly where she hid them. Yeah, put them up on the roof and then tell the guards, yeah, they're up on the roof. Go get them. But she didn't, because God had already prepared a place of refuge. Before they ever got there, and I have already mentioned this, she had already heard of them. They as a nation hadn't even crossed over into the land. It's not as though they were... It would make sense if Rahab had heard of them, if they had already come in and had some major victories in the land. It makes sense that a town like Ai had heard about them because they had already defeated Jericho. They hadn't started. It's not like they had come in and already started their campaign and already defeated cities showing what they're capable of. Once they had made a name for themselves, I could see her wanting to help them or wanting to be on their side. But at this point, they had done nothing yet, and she had already heard of them. More importantly than hearing of them, she had already heard of their God. I don't know if you caught that when she is rehearsing to them what she has heard. One of the things she mentions is the Red Sea and what their God did. She had already heard of their God. How does that happen? It's not just by chance. It wasn't coincidence that maybe she had overheard a conversation about these people that are lining up to cross the river and come over, and she may have heard conversation, but not by chance. It was not, just by word of mouth. She didn't just happen to, hear some gossip about the people that were on the way. She heard of them because God was preparing their way. She heard of them, then she went a step further with it, and she hid them. She takes them to the roof, hides them up on the roof with the flags it talks about. The guards come, and she tells them they were here, they left, and sends them on their way again. These guards, they're your people. They are her nation. Lying to them is endangering a whole lot of people. Especially because when she lies to and sends the guards away, she hadn't struck a deal with these spies yet. That didn't come till after the guards were gone that she goes to talk to them. I mean, she's taking a pretty big risk here. She's putting herself out on a limb on this one. Not only are you lying to angry guards, but you're harboring these spies, just hoping that they'll strike a deal with you. And I can only imagine, with lying to the guards, what the guards would do and what the people of the city would do if they found out that you had let them hide there. She put herself in what would have been a really tough spot for these men who she didn't even know. These men who at this point she didn't even have any association with. But she didn't hide him just because, she was a good-hearted person and felt bad for him. It was because God had prepared a place of refuge for them. She went a step further with it, then after hiding them, helps them to escape. And we know the Bible tells us, we read it when we started, she lived on the wall of the city and lets them down by the cord and helps them to be able to escape the guards and more than that, told them where to go and hide until the guards had given up. The spies go to check out Jericho, and what they find is God's already prepared a place of refuge there for us. Second thing that they find is that God had already prepared hearts. Look at verse 11 with me. And as soon as they had heard these things, our hearts did melt. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Verse 24, we see a similar idea. They said unto Joshua, truly the Lord hath delivered it into our hands all the land, for even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us. Verse 11, what does that say there? As soon as we heard these things, our hearts did melt. I don't want to say too much right here. I'm going to get ahead of myself. But hearts melting can cause different reactions. For some, when their hearts melt, they're broken. It causes them to put up walls. They get guarded. They don't want to talk to anyone. They won't tell anyone what's going on. They just kind of block out the world. For others, when their hearts melt, they get angry. Rather than showing weakness, they'd rather show strength. So they put up this front that they aren't worried, and they get upset about everything. Others, when their heart melts, they get complacent. They just sort of stop caring. But God had prepared this heart, so her reaction was different. Her reaction was different from everyone else. When her heart melted, she made two requests. The first, her heart melted, was, save me. She makes it very clear, and I'm not going to have us go back and read it again, but she makes it very clear that she knows what they're going to do. She's very aware what they're here for, and she's very aware they're going to win. She understands that they're going to leave and they're going to come back, and when they do, it's going to be to take her city. More than that, she doesn't question whether or not they will be successful. She doesn't go talk to him and ask him, if you win, will you keep me alive? No, it's when. She doesn't say, our army is going to do its best to defeat you, and they're pretty good. They've learned how to protect this wall in this city. But if by some chance you win, will you keep me alive? No, she understood. She knew. Now follow me here. God had prepared her heart to a place that she knew that if she was going to live, she needed their God. God had brought her heart to a place, when her heart melted, God had brought her heart to a place that she knew, if I'm going to survive this, I need your God. But her request goes further than just herself. She extends it to her family. She extends it to her family. Verse 12 through 14. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token that you will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. We'll go and read verse 14. The men answered her, our life for yours, if ye utter not this our business. And it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. God had prepared her heart to a place that she knew, not only do I need God to be able to survive this, but if anyone is going to live through this, through what's about to happen, they won't survive by fighting. God's already given the victory. No matter how hard they fight, it won't work. They won't survive by running. You can't outrun God. She had figured out that if her family and her loved ones were going to make it out alive, it would require that God intervene. Because God had prepared her heart. Long before the spies ever came, God prepared the heart of Rahab. When the spies came to check out Jericho, what they found was God was already there. That God had already prepared a place of refuge for them, and God had already prepared the heart of Rahab, but they also found, number 3, that God had already prepared their enemies. I'm going to have us read verse 9 through 11 one more time. It says, and she said unto them, I know that the Lord hath given you the land. I absolutely love that verse that she uses past tense on that. They haven't even crossed into the promised land yet, and she's already using past tense. You already have the land. It's yours. She said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea for you when ye came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. Now, these verses tell us 3 things about their enemies, the people of Jericho, that happened as soon as they heard of Israel. First was they fainted. They fainted. Their fear was overwhelming. You ever had something happen that did that to you, that it just scared you so much it was more than you could take? Not maybe necessarily that you fainted, but it was so overwhelming you froze. Completely overwhelmed. People will have that. They want to do some big adventurous thing, and then they get to the point of being able to do it, and they lock up and can't. I mentioned this recently, we do the whitewater rafting trip each year, and they have a section you can get off and jump off a rock, and it is funny to me because I am just not one of those people. It's funny to me how many people get off the raft, climb up on top of the rock, get to the edge, and go, oh, and stand there. And you quite literally have 8 guides at the bottom going, just jump, we need to get back in the boats and go. And it goes on and on for a long time because they want to do this fun, adventurous thing until they're there, and they freeze. I have a friend who, it's been years ago now, but he went bungee jumping, and he was supposed to bungee jump off of this bridge, and they had everything rigged up, and the instructor went over everything with him and told him, okay, it's time, and he stepped over the rail, and what he says is, my fingers locked on the rail, and I could not convince myself to let go. In fact, at that point, could not convince himself to crawl back over the rail to get back on the bridge either, and told me he sat there for, I don't know how long it was. He said it felt like an eternity that he sat there outside the rail clinging to it before they finally convinced him to get back on the bridge, and he never did jump because his fear was overwhelming. That's what's happening here. So what's happening here? I don't know that I don't think the people of Jericho literally fainted and fell down when they heard Israel's coming. But the fear that came upon them was simply overwhelming. More than they can handle. It goes on, says that their heart melted. And I already touched on that some. How many times have you heard the phrase on the opposite side of their heart melted, the heart of a warrior? In battle, you can't be chicken. I may not know a lot of, or have a lot of military knowledge, but I understand to be able to fight, you have to have that heart to be able to fight. That feeling that, I can win this, I can defeat anyone. The idea that, no matter who comes at me, they can't defeat me. Because if you go into a fight expecting to lose, you will. Then it says, there remained no more courage in any man. So they've already fainted. They're overwhelmed by what's about to happen. Their hearts have melted, that they are going into this expecting defeat, and now their courage is gone. When you are overwhelmed and your heart is melted, courage is about the only thing you have left to keep you going, to get you into the fight. I mentioned, things like the jumping off the rock and stuff like that I'm just not one of those people. I'm pretty sure this is why. I think those things terrify me just as much. I just jump anyways and get scared later. I don't know. But at least with courage, you can get some leader in front of the some leader up in front of the troops. I kind of giving them a rallying cry, or maybe I know this looks bad and we're going to lose, and we all understand that. I know that we're terrified, but at least let's go out there and give them a fight to remember type thing. With courage, you at least have that. Without courage, you don't even get that. These men go to spy out Jericho, and what they find is that their God had already been there. He's already prepared the way. He's already won Jericho for them. You know what they found? They found that what Joshua and Caleb had told them 40 years earlier was exactly true. Because that's what, when Joshua and Caleb came out and the 10 other spies gave the bad report and they gave their report, that was what their report was. It wasn't, look at our army, we can go in and defeat these giants. It was, look at our God, He's already done it. What these spies came out of Jericho recognizing was 40 years ago, Joshua and Caleb were right. So what's the point of all this? The point is this: just like the children of Israel, just like they were headed toward a battle, going into the promised land, they knew that's what was coming. I don't know how to say this without it sounding negative, but so are we. Years ago now, I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but as I was studying for this kept coming in my mind. I tried to look it up, and I know I have it somewhere. I wasn't able to find it because I wanted to listen to it. Years ago, though, Brother Wolf preached a message here about the storms of life, and some of you may remember it. Storms and battles in life are unavoidable. More than unavoidable, they're necessary. They're necessary. You look at the children of Israel, they needed to take this land. But just like they found out that God, before the battle had even taken place, that God had already prepared the way. If we look, God's done the same for us. So, looking at that, if we look at storms and battles are necessary and they are coming as we head into battle, God's already prepared a refuge for us. Can I say, you're in it right now? This church is your refuge from the battle you face in this world. It's where you're safe. It's where we're protected and loved. It's where we can be refreshed and recharged for the battle ahead. God's prepared a refuge for you. As we head into battle, God has prepared hearts. He's preparing the way before you even head out. For some, maybe years in advance. I love hearing testimonies of people like that they can look back in their life and see people who for years before they got saved had been witnessing to them, or things that God had brought along in their life that had been preparing them. My dad mentioned that earlier tonight about in 7th grade, having that witness, because God had gone ahead to prepare hearts. As we head into battle, God has already prepared our enemy for defeat. All the way back in Genesis, God prepared Satan for what was coming. And just like the people at Jericho, Satan knows the outcome. He knows what's coming, and he knows there's nothing he can do about it. So here's what all that means. You and I, as we use the phrase as soldiers of the Lord, you and I can go boldly into the battles that lie ahead of us, knowing that God's already there and already prepared my way. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you will, Lord, help us to recognize this. And I think come to the place of relying on you. It's where this leads, is they come back recognizing, wow, God's already there. God's already done this. And all they had to do was simply trust him. Just rely on that God's already there, he's already prepared the way, and just lean on him. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to be able to grasp a hold of this, Lord. I know that it's not a fun idea to think about that there are battles that lie ahead. But we can take comfort in the fact that you've gone ahead and you've prepared the way. I just need to trust your way. Pray this in your name. Amen. So I'll go ahead and stand with heads bowed and eyes closed tonight.